So I guess like everyone else, it's kind of a big topic. So I thought probably the easiest is just to sort of talk briefly about how I got interested in the body and then how I see things changing and how we understand the body and health. I guess everyone that's on this platform is on there because their health is part of their journey as a person, but a lot of people come to health practitioners outside of what we would call the allopathic physician and GPs because they're looking for answers to questions which aren't being asked. Myself, I got into yoga and then massage at 19 while I was doing Japanese and Chinese studies at university in Canberra. And I was able to learn shiatsu with a practitioner who'd been in a monastery in Japan for 30 years. So that was my introduction. And so stillness and connection was as probably the same for everyone else on here, was the thing that was most interesting in how you connect to people. And really over the last 30 years, I've just added in more knowledge, but the core principle of what I learned in the first couple of years from my massage teachers, who were all, interestingly and fortunately, women in their 60s, who had that maturity to be able to pass on that it's all about how you touch, not what you touch. And it's also about how you connect with people. And then as I went from massage to shiatsu to rolfing to cranial to different techniques, I think what I learned is that techniques don't really matter. And so when I listen to a lot of practitioners talking, whether they're osteopaths or physiotherapists, or if I get patients that ring up and they say, do you do cranial therapy? Do you do traditional Japanese acupuncture? Do you do dry needling? The answer I always have is yes, I've studied that. And yes, I found it interesting. And yes, there was a time in my life when I thought I was going to fix everyone with that technique, because that technique fixed me for some injury that I had at the time, or I had a curiosity. And so therefore I thought, because that technique was wonderful, so cranial myofascial release, shiatsu, I put it sort of the top of the tree because I think they're so delicious to experience as patients. And when we feel them, we feel supported and our body feels amazing. But as I learned more in the medical field, my brain became more curious about, why is it that I feel fantastic? What is it that my body is experiencing? And the field of pain science, although it's very dry from the outside, actually becomes very fascinating, as does the field of fascia. So I'm not sure how many of you know, but we're now up to the 4th or 5th World Congress on fascia. The one this year will be on in Montreal. It's been postponed because of the dreaded COVID. But that brings together people like who are on this platform, plus people who are rolfers who are looking at fascia. They look at how the body expands. Then you have cellular biologists, and then you have people looking at the nervous system. You have what are called communication specialists, which are not IT people, but they're people looking at how the body communicates with itself. And that's an absolutely fascinating field. And one little tidbit out of that, the last one that we had in Berlin 3 years ago, that sensation that we have when we do kinesiology and we get a warmth through a body, or shiatsu, and we say that it's an energy release, or we put acupuncture needles in, we say de chi, or we say it's myofascial and cranial and the body releases. We can now see that in real time. Like, science has got to the point where you can actually look at layers of fascia, and they can have scanners inside the body, and you can watch tissue layers of fascia dilate and cells move through the body. And someone will say, I can feel my body feeling warm. And at the same time, you can see that happening. And so when I look at that and I think of all the options that I have available to me to treat back pain, because of course, back pain is, a multifaceted thing, I think it becomes more interesting rather than more boring, because whatever we think we know now, I think reflects my 30-year journey in this. I often say to people, yep, I've got three undergraduate degrees, 1 master's, 6 diplomas, 10 or 12 certificates, and every day I still feel like a beginner. So, because we all learn off every patient. So the approach that I always take then is to think, what is this person actually presenting with? So I caught the last half of the kinesiology lady. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. But, a lot of what she said, Joe, yeah. A lot of what she says, I can remember being
tell us.
in my 20s as a massage therapist and shiatsu therapist and cranial therapist. But also the language is different, but it's also the same when you're learning about where the neuroscience is, because we now know that if you have 1 million people with a bulging disc, 20% of them have no pain at all. And so the world of MRI and ultrasound from the late 90s on has shown us that when we say the model that we talk about, I'm not sure that you're familiar, is called the lever pulley system. And so it dominated osteopathy, chiropractic and surgery from really World War II until about the 1990s, that someone was tight and therefore the lever, which was the joint and bone, was being compressed by the pulley, which was the muscle and the fascia and the ligament and tendon. And so our job as practitioners, and we're all the same, it doesn't matter if we cry, scream, massage, acupuncture, crack, is to loosen that up. But MRI has shown us that that often is not what a solution is. And so then we look more at inflammation. And then the inflammation and back pain starts to include what we were talking about before with the cells in the fascia, but it also starts to include the microbiome. And we start to see that if we have 100 Sam McCarthys, age 49, with, you know, middle-class white genetics and living in the eastern suburbs or the North Shore or the inner west of Sydney, and we get, 100 of me, we would find 20 of me would have bulging discs, herniated disc, compressed sciatic nerve and no pain. But 5 would have horrific pain because they're inflamed or they're depressed or they have microbiome. And so the patterns change and the models that we use are changing. And so then we do this full cycle back to Joe with the kinesiology, where life is a continuum. Life is a health journey, and it's not so simple to say, look, my GP gave me a bulging disc and therefore I've got to have it chopped, because you can chop it, but that's not the source of the pain. It's a secondary problem. So I guess what I would leave you with is what I read 25 years ago in the beginning of my studies into osteopathy and myofascial release and these approaches. And it was a great quote which is, we treat anatomy to alter physiology. And that means that we alter physiological processes. And that connects osteopathy and musculoskeletal medicine much more back to shiatsu and acupuncture and things. And then the more modern take on that in osteopathy has been that osteopathy is an interconnection of systems and an interdependence of systems. So your fascia, your musculoskeletal network works with your neurological network, your lymphatic network, and of course your psychological and emotional, or your energetic, depending on how straight down the line you are as an osteopath or how open-minded you are. And so those systems are all balanced. So here we are in 2022, and we're talking about the same thing A.T. Till talked about in 1863 when he wrote the first book on osteopathy, and the same thing, but dry, modern, rational science in every university system in the world is talking about the same thing. So this dividing line that we had, where we were sort of one group over here and one group over here, we're actually all in the same spot. We're just using different language to talk about it and different conceptual frameworks. So I think that's what's really interesting going forward, how we get past language and how we get past frameworks to see that we're all just coming at it from different angles.
Sam, what a great person you are in your field, and how fantastic that you've finished off for us, because I think, it's really pointed out that we're all in this journey together. It's perspective, and we can only get richer by understanding each other's perspectives, and our clients can only get richer by exploring all our different perspectives. So yeah. I'm very excited about hearing how you talk of it. Yeah. And also, when did you say that osteopathy started? 1863?
Well, osteopathy is the mothership, A.T. Still was 1863. Chiropractic was after World War I, and he was an osteopathic student, and he broke away because he didn't believe in the medical approach. He just believed in the spine. Physiotherapy is sort of late 1920s, because you had a lot of returned soldiers that needed to be looked after. Kinesiology, I'm not sure, people here may have different knowledge, but there were 2 brothers, the Leibovitz brothers in Lithuania and Latvia, and they developed muscle testing. One was an osteopath, one was a chiropractor in the 1920s and 1930s. My personal thing is that I have a personal belief that A.T. Still, who was a 4th generation doctor, so he was never an alternative medicine doctor, and every osteopath in America has always been an MD, a medical doctor, and an osteopath. But I think we would find that a lot of the people there were Chinese workers were working on the railway system, and he would travel like a lot of doctors along the railway into Western America then. I think he was getting a lot of acupuncture, and he poached a bit of the philosophy. Because if you look at the basic I Ching and you look at the early osteopathic writings, they're almost like that, you know? It's a bit of an in-joke in the osteopathic philosophy world.